from the Mercy One studio.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and the Uncommon Good provided by Mercy College of Health Sciences. Learn more at mchs.edu.
Welcome, folks, to the Uncommon Good with Bo Bonner and Dr. Bud Marr. Every week, diving deep into the truth of Catholic social teaching and restoring all things in Christ.
The Uncommon Good is on the air. I'm Bo Bonner.
And I'm Dr. Bud Marr.
We are coming to you live from these United States of America here on a Wednesday on Iowa Catholic Radio, where it's me, Bo Bonner, Dr. Bud Marr. We both work at Iowa Catholic Radio, of course, but Mercy College of Health Sciences that underwrites our show. I am the director of the newly formed Center for Human Flourishing and the senior advisor for mission initiatives to the president there. Bud, what do you do at the old, I was going to say ball game, but the old alma mater?
I'm the academic dean at the college, but I have to say as well, it's great to be in studio. We pre-recorded, I think, our last episode, but there's more energy in the studio.
So much vibrance. It's electronic.
It's electric.
Also, Jimmy's looking at us, Bud, we never pre-record. That never happens.
Oh.
We're always, I'm joking.
Was that a faux pas?
No. Folks, just so you know, just a real honest moment. Sometimes people pre-record. No big deal. At any rate, we Iowa Catholic Radio. What is never pre-recorded is the Love Mercy College shows for us, mchs.edu, where you can come and answer the call for the healing ministry that's needed, not only in Des Moines, but wherever you might be, mchs.edu.
Yeah, and if you've been following the news, we need some intelligent, compassionate, professional medical professionals at every level of healthcare.
And, one of the things I know Bud works on the most is the multivalent ways that you can do that. So there's not only traditional programs, online programs, accelerated programs. Sometimes it can make one's head spin. To show you that Bud does real work, I always get here early and I'm like drinking coffee, making jokes with Jimmy. And Bud, you're like on meetings up until, we actually jump on the radio show. So I just wanted to take this time to laud you on the work that you're doing there.
Oh, goodness. I think if you read those, like, Who Moved My Cheese or 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, that they say, like, leave a half-hour buffer, at least in between meetings, but I have not honed that strategy yet.
Cheese just melts into other cheese. So it's like cheddar getting into the brie and everything.
If folks hear cheese dripping on the show today, you know what happened.
The Uncommon Good. We're cheesy. Well, there's no way to recover from saying something that stupid, but we do got a good show for you today. So to immediately switch gears, what we're going to talk about is Leviathan and the Bride of Christ. So that's like a scary-sounding heavy metal album type show. And Bud, we both talked about that. We probably have enough to talk about that. This will probably be the first part. I mean, might be able to do another show about this. But suffice it to say, Thomas Hobbes, one of the premier modern political philosophers, called the state Leviathan. And he had a very specific idea about what that meant. And so a lot of reasons in the news, I should say, Bud, for why the idea of how church and state relate throughout history matter. So hopefully we can get into not only that in principle, but also sort of realities on the ground in the history of the United States and the Catholic Church.
Yeah, and I guess as a preface to the show, seriously not trying to geek out too much today and just like, we're going to willy-nilly talk about, a philosopher from a few centuries ago. But I think what you're saying, Thomas Hobbes, what he wrote, still reverberates through our culture. And so another way to think about this is like conversations in the United States around separation of church and state. And as Catholics, this is the reality that we live in today. So how do we do that well? How do we do that faithfully?
So, of course, if you have any questions regarding this show, you can use the ZipWhip line, 515-223-1150. But you can also interact with us through all of our social media. There you go. Nice. IowaCatholicRadio.com, where you can donate, listen live, contact people. You can go to Facebook, follow us, Iowa Catholic Radio. You can go to Twitter at IA Catholic Radio, follow our tweets. You can also download the Iowa Catholic Radio app, and anywhere that you can get data, you can listen live, donate, etc., etc. So this is the Uncommon Good. We have a great show lined up for you today. Bo Bonner, Dr. Bud Marr, happy that you're here joining us on a very hot Wednesday, but it's always cool in the shade listening to the radio. This is the Uncommon Good, and we'll be back right after this.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio's broadcast of Dowling Catholic sports and activities is provided by Chemin, a global ingredient manufacturer using science to transform the quality of life for 80% of the world. Chemin is on the leading edge of molecular science, manufacturing more than 500 specialty ingredients for the human and animal health and nutrition, pet food, aquaculture, nutraceutical, food technologies, crop technologies, and textile industries. Chemin strives to sustainably transform the quality of life every day for 80% of the world with their products and services. Chemin, using science to transform the world. Online at chemin.com. St. Vincent de Paul's assists those living in poverty to become self-sufficient. Learn more at svdpsm.org or call 515-282-8327. This message brought to you by Homemakers Furniture.
What is the best gift ever? Giving a Catholic education is at the top of my list. Your contribution to CTO helps families send their children to our Catholic schools who otherwise could not afford it. In giving to CTO, you receive the best tax credits ever. Pledge or donate online at ctoiowa.org. The bottom line, it's for the kids and their future.
There are millions of children that go hungry every day. Thank you to Skeffington's Formalware for supporting Mary's Meals. Their vision is that every child in the world should be able to receive at least one good meal every day in a place of education. MarysMealsUSA.org.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Catholic Women Now provided in part by Marr Security, a Catholic-owned family business providing security solutions for homes and businesses since 1953. Marr Security, 515-244-5660, PermarSecurity.com.
Back with the Uncommon Good, Bo Bonner and Dr. Bud Marr joining you this Wednesday here on Iowa Catholic Radio. Thank you for listening, and as we said, easy to find out more about Iowa Catholic Radio and all of it's going on, iowacatholicradio.com. Listen live, donate, and sign up for newsletters and all of our social media outlets as well. So, Bud, today we're going to talk about, just light fare, the long-standing battle between the church and how it relates to the state. We chose the heavy metal album cover-esque name, Leviathan and the Bride of Christ. So just to unpack that, and then I think that gets into what we want to talk about. The Bride of Christ, of course, is the church herself. The church as an institution, particularly, and how it exists through time. Leviathan is the name that Thomas Hobbes, preeminent 16th century political philosopher from England, who really, whether we agree with what he says or not, very particularly, nearly any modern democracy borrows from his idea of the social contract. And he wrote a book called Leviathan, and this is a nod to the sea beast from the book of Job. But the idea that there's no earthly power that can stand against it, that's what he's riffing on. So he says the state needs to be Leviathan so that what he was living through, the religious wars, could cease. And so from that, when you get into his details, he doesn't really care if it's democratic or monarchical. He has those stuff don't really concern him. But this idea that he, in some way, with that figure of Leviathan, sort of forecasts the modern world and sort of the power that the state has now come to have. That's why we chose that name. And so part of what's going on is there's a lot of talk in the church today about how the church should relate to civil society, the state, governments, all these things like this. And we find ourselves, I think it's fair to say, in a relatively strange pickle, to say the least. And so this question has ramifications throughout the ages, throughout time. Even, I think of John Henry Newman, who you are an expert in, these questions, especially when you talk about Anglicans who become Catholic, how does the church and the state go together? We keep having these conversations. So on that note, Bud, I guess if we want to start out, why is it you think we continually have these conversations? This is not something that we can sort of wrap in a bow and get done. This is something we're going to struggle with as the church until the end of time.
Well, it is a struggle. And to reference a more recent author, there's David Foster Wallace tells this joke in a famous speech that he gave where there's a few young fish swimming through the ocean, and they pass a large fish, and he says, "How's the water, boys?" And they swim by and then turn to each other and say, like, "What's water? Like, what the heck's water?" And the point is, for like fish, water just feels like the world. It's just their reality. And I like what you said about Hobbes. I don't think our listeners should go out this evening. I mean, if they want to, that's fine. But to half price books and find Leviathan and read it. But you're right, Bo. What he wrote has become sort of like the water we swim in. This idea of a social contract theory, that there's divisions that we have as human beings that sort of can't be overcome. So the governing authority, who he called Leviathan, it doesn't make a judgment about good and bad, right and wrong. It just, so to speak, like polices the rest of us. And I can pursue my vision of happiness and you can pursue yours as long as we, so to speak, don't bump into each other. And so life together in community kind of becomes like, there's a Supreme Court justice said that like, your rights stop where your nose meets my fist. Right. And that's how we think about life together. We don't have a robust conception of the common good. It's just kind of like we have to find ways not to bump into each other. And what I want to press this morning is that as Catholics, we have all these resources, and our entire tradition has insisted that our common life should be more than that, has to be more than that. The common good is, I mean, I know we come back to this so often on the show, but it's just an essential foundational idea as Catholics. And when we were prepping for the show yesterday, one more quick idea, I was kind of thinking and saying, like the early Christians in some way had it easier. And it's weird to put it that way because we read the New Testament, we're like, man, it would stink if like the government was trying to track you down and kill you. But when we think about faithfulness, the boundary lines in the New Testament were pretty clearly drawn. Mm-hmm. Whereas for us, in our situation, I do feel like we can be more like frogs in water that's being turned up to a slow boil. And we kind of think like, well, I go to Mass on Sunday and love my kids, eat my vegetables, pay my taxes. And that's all good and fine. But we can sort of lose that kind of like sense of the church militant, that there is a tension sometimes between what we're trying to build and what Thomas Hobbes was envisioning.
Right. And I think that's a great way to start this out, because I think people are starting to really become wary of the church seeming just like an extension of all the infighting that's happening around the United States. People will lead with this idea that, we've let the politicization in the larger culture become entrenched in church culture. And I think that's true, of course, but to not go underneath and ask why that is the case it's not easy to just tell someone, so stop that. Mm-hmm. So stop, like for the fish thing, stop swimming in water. So we have to get down and ask, well, what is this? Why is this the case? And so as you point out, the church believes in primordial peace, the tranquility of order. God created the world good, peaceful, with an order. Sin has disrupted it. And you can even be pretty, I will say, bleak or pessimistic about how thoroughgoing sin has messed up human relations. You can think of like Augustine maybe. But the idea still is at root. God, who is love itself, created the world ordered and peaceful. And that's what we have to get back to even when we think about our social arrangements. Thomas Hobbes does not believe this at all. He talks about the state of nature, which is like the war of all against all, that before the state, human life was brutish, short, and mean? I forget. Violent, excuse me. And so for him, the state, Leviathan, must be powerful and must intervene, like you said, not to make decisions about the good or the bad. There's no fall. There's no sin that we need to, redeem and then get back to the peaceful order or forward to the heavenly one. There is simply order or not. And so therefore, Leviathan has to use violence to make peace. So for the modern social orders, that's the truth. The truth is not that there is a peace that we've fallen away from into violence. For them, there is violence, and then there's violence that can be used to make sort of like an open space where peace can sort of be possible. And so the idea with the social contract is not like, show me the Constitution and I sign on. Mm-hmm. The social contract is, do you submit to the violence of Leviathan so we can have peace? And you can do what you want as long as it doesn't interfere with someone else, because that causes unrest, or as long as it doesn't get in the way of Leviathan making a peaceful order. So why does this apply to then like what we said about, the church mimicking too much of the infighting of the social order? Well, that's because when you decide what church to belong to, or what faction of the church to belong to, or how to navigate in fighting in the church, which there's always been, you either will do it like Hobbes, or you'll do it like the church says. Do we believe that sin has caused these divisions and there's something to get beyond or behind the sin? Or do we say, of course, all there is violence unless we submit to a superior violence that allows there to be peace? And Bud, factionalization in a Hobbesian key will destroy anything in the end that can't be papered over with that Leviathan violence.
Well, that phrase that you used about primordial peace is so essential. And paradoxically, Hobbes says, like, order will be imposed on the community. Like, you will take your order and you will like it.
You will love it.
And so it's something that's, like you said, it's dealing with violence by, like, wresting from that violence. Not really peace, but, like we're saying, order. But when listeners hear that, when we talk about primordial peace, I know the question that's raised is like, that sounds nice and good, but I have no idea what that looks like. I would say look at the Mass. Like when we gather on the Lord's Day and, the priest blesses the bread and the wine and offers it up to God as the body and blood of Christ, like you experience a foretaste of the tranquility of order that will be known in its fullness in heaven. And it's not imposed on you. Like you're invited to the altar. You're invited to receive Christ. And there's not the same kind of hierarchies that there is a kind of hierarchy, but it's not the way that the world sort of operates. Everyone's welcome to the table regardless of their socioeconomic status, their ethnic background. The church is meant to be universal, as we talked about a few weeks on the show. And so that's your foretaste. That's what it looks like. But the challenge for us today is like when we gather at Mass, I think if the priest says the black and does the red, we experience that primordial peace. But then we're sent out into the world, and we can't. There's no way to just like stay in our parish church like 24/7, 365. So then when we go out into the streets, or when like our parish is not extracted from the world, it's within a community, what does it look like to navigate that relationship?
There's no way this is a one-part show, by the way. It might be a 3-part show. But before we get to the break, I think one way to put this is we are supposed to, like you said, commune with that primordial peace in Mass and try to bring it to the world. But folks, how often do we bring in the contentions and the factions of the world into the Mass? And when we do that, that is when I'll throw it out, blaspheme the primordial peace that is God. Coming up to the break, when we get back, we'll try to talk about that a little bit, about the implications that has for daily church life. This is The Uncommon Good. Bo Bonner, Dr. Bud Marr. Stick around. We'll be back right after this.
Hi, this is Joe Stopulus. Thank you to construction professionals for underwriting Man Up, Monday mornings at 9 on Iowa Catholic Radio. Construction Professionals, a Catholic family business built on a strong foundation. cpcustomhomes.com.
Thank you to Mercy One for their support of Iowa Catholic Radio. From the cardiovascular experts at the Iowa Heart Center to the pediatric services of Mercy Children's Hospital and Clinics, Mercy provides complete care for Central Iowa's adults and children with more than 50 primary care and specialty clinics in the Des Moines area. Find a convenient Mercy One location near you. Online at mercydesmoines.org.
Thanks to Blessman International for their support of Iowa Catholic Radio. Every year, Blessman International leads teams of Central Iowans to share the compassionate heart of Christ with orphans and vulnerable children in South Africa. You can learn more and sign up for a trip at blessmaninternational.org.
Thank you, Ashworth Vision Clinic, for underwriting Dowling Catholic Sports 365 on Iowa Catholic Radio. Ashworth Vision Clinic online at ashworthvision.com. Ashworth Vision Clinic, 515-440-4610.
Thank you, Dental Associates, for supporting Dowling Catholic Sports 365. Dental Associates, addressing your smile, needs, and dreams. 515-225-6742. Online at Des Moines-DentalAssociates.com.
Thank you, Big Red Q Quick Print, for underwriting the Sports Report. Family owned and operated since 1980, Big Red Q Quick Print is a full-service print shop ready to help you with all your printing needs with speed and accuracy. BigRedQ-DesMoines.com.
Thank you, Golden Rule Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling, for sponsoring my show. John Lee and Eddie in the morning on Iowa Catholic Radio. Golden Rule, servicing Des Moines for over 15 years. They obey the rules to live by, especially the Golden Rule. Online at goldenrulephc.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio provided by the Liturgical Institute, offering degrees, online certificates, retreats, and conferences. Learn about your role in the Mass and how you can be formed into the very likeness of God. liturgicalinstitute.org/Iowa.
Back with the Uncommon Good, Bo Bonner and Dr. Bud Marr joining you this Wednesday. Thank you for listening to the show. We are talking about Leviathan and the Bride of Christ, something that Bud and I have decided is like a 3 to 7 episode series. We'll see how this goes. But suffice it to say, the idea about how does the modern idea of the state, so not like the government, not trying to fall into like easy categories that fall in political parties is important from what we're trying to say, but the idea that in the modern state there is a primordial violence that can only be quelled, you can only impose peace, versus the Bride of Christ who believes that peace is the original state, that God himself is peace, that we've fallen away from sin, and that we have to, in our social life, get back to. So what that makes me think of are the practical things that you can take away as you go into church life is, Bud, there is so many arguments the church is currently having, and it always has. We're not trying to say something silly like the church used to never have these. But if you overmap the political shenanigans that are very fiery and factitious in 2021, you will be doing a disservice by treating what the church has to do as if it's just one more field of Leviathan. So you can't do things in the church just to, quote-unquote, own the libs. You can't do stuff in the church just to, quote-unquote, own the conservatives or the trads or whoever. When you start doing church that way, you have stopped taking the peace of the Eucharist out into the world and instead have imported Leviathan's violence into the church. And that factitiousness is devastating to the ability for the church to live its mission.
Yeah, that's great. And this next point, it has to be a sneak preview as well, to be honest. But when we think about actually going out into the world and what our witness looks like, I don't like the term day-to-day life, but we know what we're, like when we're fulfilling our vocations or living as mothers and fathers, et cetera, it would be nice. We've read parts of Leviathan with undergraduates, and we read it and talk about it. And when they hear this, some of them say, like, well, he's wrong. I'm like, I know. And so they're like, can we just, chuck him out and sort of treat it like, I think about like talking to my toddler about like the boogeyman in the closet or the monster under the bed. And you just say like, well, he doesn't really exist. We can't really do that with Leviathan. It would be nice, but so many of our institutions and even I wish I could give examples, but politicians, they think with a Hobbesian mindset. So it's not like we can just pretend like he never wrote the book. But it's actually instructive, I think, Bo, and this is what we can talk about on a later episode. We're still called to engage. This is the idea of the church militant, or if you want to talk about like faithful public witness. So as we talked about, I think on last week's show, it's a great thing to run hospitals, to start schools. Some Catholics might be called into, public service as a member of Congress or as a state senator. And when we go out in there's no way to, I'm just going to deprogram the Catholic side of me and, do the 9 to 5. That's not what we're called to. But it's good to be aware of the water that we're swimming in and of the assumptions of those around us, because there are times where we're going to have to say to folks in a sense, like, I want to join you in this work, but what you're talking about, it doesn't fit with what I know my allegiance is to Christ. And again, that's going to have to just be something we unpack at a later date.
I think that's right. I think in part two, part of this is to line out this in history, how this looks in the church, the problems that have arisen, the good we've done, and then get to how that looks in America today. But suffice it to say, we know from Jeremiah we're to pray for the good of the city we've been exiled in. We're in the world but not of the world. That's all good and well. But when you're running around in the world, not of the world, the big temptation is to go ahead and be of the world too. And I think that's what we have the obligation to wrestle with as the church in history is we're not quietist. We don't run off into the woods. We don't ignore the world's problems. We get in there. We get dirty. We smell like the sheep, like Pope Francis says. But problem is, if you start smelling like a sheep enough, you might become one. You might become a part of that herd. And so I think that's what we have to do with the church, is always be mindful of that temptation.
Well, it's kind of a cheesy, but I hope timely metaphor. You know, when you think about baseball, you learn from a master of the craft, but you can't just, like, if Jackie Robinson teaches you to play baseball, you can't just go be Jackie Robinson. Like, you're thrust into a specific game at a specific time. So it would be nice, like, sometimes we think, like, oh, we'll just be the first century Christians, or we'll just resurrect Christendom. And I'm sorry, folks, that's just not what Providence has brought our way. It's not the hand that we've been dealt. We're meant to look back to the master craftsmen. We're meant to look back to the saints and say, how do we pattern ourselves after them? But it's going to look different in 2021.
No, I think that's exactly right, and very timely way to put that. In fact, if we're talking about how do we, one way we can be this like the saints but do it in our own time is to pray, and pray often. So here at Iowa Catholic Radio, we have many ways that you can pray with us. Bud, what are some of those opportunities?
You can pray the rosary with us daily at 5:30 a.m. and 9:30 a.m. The Angelus is prayed at 6 a.m. and noon, and the Divine Mercy Chaplet at 3. Local shows and some of those prayer opportunities are also always available on demand at iowacatholicradio.com and the Iowa Catholic Radio app.
Absolutely. So events coming up soon that you can be a part of here in the Diocese of Des Moines with Iowa Catholic Radio. Stop by the Iowa Catholic Radio tent at the Iowa State Fair, August 12th through 22nd. On the west side of the Ann and Bill Riley stage, we will have deacons and priests joining us at the tent through the fair. Iowa Catholic Radio welcomes Casting Crowns and Jordan Feliz to the Iowa State Fair Grandstand Thursday, August 12th at 8 p.m. And also you can learn more about that at iowastatefair.org. The Man Up West Power Lunch is back Friday, August 13th at noon, St. Francis of Assisi Parish in West Des Moines. Deacon Mark Campbell will be discussing the consecration to St. Joseph, and you can join that consecration and the 110th anniversary of the Diocese of Des Moines at the St. Patrick Irish Settlement in Cumming, Iowa, Sunday, August 15th, Mass at 4 p.m. with William Bishop Joensen. Iowa Catholic Radio welcomes We the Kingdom to the Iowa State Fair on the Ann and Bill Riley stage on August 22nd at 8 p.m., and then the Women's Conference is Saturday, October 30th at the Embassy Suites downtown Des Moines with Dr. Kathleen Beckman, Barbara Heil, and Tim Jameson discussing the ongoing spiritual war in today's world. Doors open at 7 a.m., and then the conference starts in earnest at 9. We also still have Iowa Catholic Radio job openings. For instance, Chief Engineer. Who would not want to work with us? Come along and apply. Folks, we always... We're not just the people that you hear on air behind the boards or in the office. This is a ministry that involves you as well. Your time, talent, and treasure. If you can donate to materially support us, please do so. iowacatholicradio.com, 515-223-1150, where you can call or text in or donate on the app. This is the Uncommon Good. May Jesus Christ, the Prince of Peace, reign in our hearts, our families, city, state, nation, galaxy, the whole kit and caboodle. This is the Uncommon Good, and we'll be back next week.
The Uncommon Good with Bo Bonner and Dr. Bud Marr is heard every week on wonderful Catholic stations like this one, and anytime on podcast. Just search for The Uncommon Good.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and The Uncommon Good provided by Mercy College of Health Sciences. Learn more at mchs.edu.